anti-Muslim racism is on the rise in Germany. A report by a civil society group called CLAIM, the Alliance Against Hostility Towards Islam and Muslims, counted more than 1,900 anti-Muslim incidents in 2023. On average, this is more than 5 anti-Muslim cases per day, and this is more than twice as many as in 2022.
It's not a new phenomenon. It has existed for decades.
I realized the more I talk about Islam, the more I get rejected by society.
So just how widespread is the problem and how seriously are authorities taking it? Claims report differentiates between verbal assault, discrimination and harmful behavior. Verbal attacks, including threats and insults, make up the highest number of cases. This is followed by discrimination and harmful behavior, including 4 attempted homicides and 5 arson attacks. Women experience anti-Muslim racism more frequently than men. 62% of cases affect women, according to a recent report.
In der Schulzeit, da hat man mich die ganze Zeit geärgert. Ja, also die Jungs, das haben die halt gerne gemacht. Die haben mir dann öfters das Kopftuch runtergerissen. In der Schule, die Lehrer haben immer zugeschaut. Manchmal haben die auch nach der Schule auf mich gewartet und mich da angegriffen, mich geschubst, mich geschlagen und mir das Kopftuch runtergerissen.
Claims report from 2023 highlights that anti-Muslim racism has risen in Germany since Hamas October 7 terror attack. There were 679 incidents between October 7 and December 31, 2023. This makes up around 35% of cases during the whole year, happening in roughly 3 months. The report didn't take online hate speech and racist posters into account, so the unrecorded number of racist incidents might be much higher. That's also because people affected often don't report their cases. The EU's Fundamental Rights Agency has found that only 12% of those who experience anti-Muslim racism in Germany report it.
Muslims, even if faced with hate crimes and having to report those with the police, are faced with an authority that they don't trust and that they don't think, understand, or acknowledge their lived experiences in Germany.
Growing up in Germany, I always felt uncomfortable sharing my religion with my fellow students or my fellow colleagues because it always ends up in insensible questions or some weird comments that I didn't want to have.
Und dann kam halt auch der 11. September und das wurde dann viel, viel schlimmer. Es kam Schuldzuweisungen, dass ich und meine Religion für das alles verantwortlich ist, für den Terror verantwortlich ist.
They take my name Mohammed and there used to be like a terrorist who was working with bin Laden. They use my name and say, haha, you're Mohammed Atta, like the terrorist and stuff.
According to a report by CLAIM, the highest number of anti-Muslim incidents in different areas of life happen in educational institutions, which make up 21%, making it harder for affected people to succeed. Followed by the educational sector, people experience the most racist incidents in public spaces, with 18.92%, and at work, with 13.65%. Discrimination in school or university can also have a negative effect on an individual's professional career, forcing affected people to choose between their identity and acceptance in society. It's a structural problem that takes place at all levels of society. We heard from Zahra in the beginning. She stopped wearing the hijab because of the severe racism she experienced every day and also to make progress in education.
Ich habe es dann nicht mehr mit Freude getragen, eher mit Angst. Ich wollte mich halt einfach wohlfühlen und ich wollte auch weiterkommen im Leben und mal endlich eine Ausbildung machen, arbeiten gehen.
People documenting anti-Muslim racism in Germany report a lot of negative narratives being reproduced in media and on a political level too.
What is happening is like the politicians and a big chunk of the society are targeting Muslim communities and saying this is absolutely normal and okay.
This doesn't just sit within far-right movements or political parties, but also within mainstream political parties and the media. And this is a dangerous trend.
In a 2022 survey, more than half of people questioned in Germany thought that Islam is very threatening or somewhat threatening. And 38% agreed with the statement that they sometimes feel foreign in their own country because of the many Muslims. 29% agreed with the statement that Muslims shouldn't be allowed to immigrate. Some point to numbers like these as a clear sign of a broader political failure.
I would say that there are some performative things that the German state is trying, but if you look at them with a critical perspective, you understand very quickly that they're doing the opposite than protecting. For example, there is the Deutsche Islam Konferenz. It's like a conference, if you want to say, that is coming together at least once a year or more often sometimes. And officially it's about like different Muslim communities coming together and talking about different issues.
The goal of the Deutsche Islam Conference is to create a dialogue between the government and Muslims living in Germany. Initiatives and members of the Muslim community in Germany, as well as state representatives, come together to talk about current issues.
But from the German government officially, what they do is the securitization of any Muslim issues. It's always about security. It's always about you are a threat actually to us.
Other efforts were made after a racist attack in the city of Hanau in 2020. A far-right extremist shot dead 9 people at several locations, including a shisha bar. The killer published anti-Muslim and anti-Semitic content online before his rampage. The same year, the Federal Interior Ministry appointed an independent body of experts on hostility against Muslims. 3 years later, the body published a thorough report about the current state of anti-Muslim racism in Germany, including concrete policy suggestions. But afterwards, the ministry distanced itself from the report, making it clear that it was not a ministerial publication.
It is very disappointing that the government has so far not taken any steps in implementing these report recommendations.
We've been using the term anti-Muslim racism, but there's not even an agreed-upon definition of what that is on a state level.
If we are discussing the understanding of anti-Muslim racism in German society, but obviously also by German authorities, the answer is that there is still a lack of understanding and recognition of the concept of anti-Muslim racism.
German anti-racism experts explain this form of racism as discrimination, hostility, or prejudice as directed at Muslims or people who are falsely perceived as Muslims based on their appearance, origin, or culture. So it can affect German-born Muslims or non-Muslims and also migrants and refugees due to negative stereotypes towards them in German society. Experts say it's important to differentiate between the terms anti-Muslim racism and Islamophobia, which they say does not take the structural dimensions into account and does not focus on those who aren't Muslims but perceived as such. But when the Interior Ministry published numbers of hate crimes in 2023, it stuck with the more narrow term Islamophobic.
It's a necessity to have such a definition, and ultimately it will then also increase the protection of victims of anti-Muslim racism. And it is also a form of empowerment for the victims of anti-Muslim racism because they are, the phenomenon is being recognized by the authorities, by society.
So it's crucial to have a clear understanding of what anti-Muslim racism really is, and this needs to be recognized by the state to really make a change on the structural level.
To protect affected people and communities. But what also needs to happen is increase or strengthened data collection countrywide to ensure that understanding and documentation of not just incidents of anti-Muslim racism, but also an understanding of the needs for protection of people.
The Federal Anti-Discrimination Office is funding a research project with 70,000 euros to look into the current state of anti-Muslim racism in Germany. Civil society groups also recommend more funding for support and counseling structures. To register racist incidents, they say, a nationwide information and reporting structure would be helpful, comparable to already existing ones that fight anti-Semitism and racism against Sinti and Roma. Claim is also calling for an expert council and a federal commissioner for combating anti-Muslim racism. And it says that anti-racism trainings should be mandatory for people working in administration and in the private sector. Healthcare professionals need to be sensitized to ensure the right medical care for those affected by racism. And what are affected people wishing for?
Ich finde, man sollte mehr aufklären über den Islam, mehr Dialoge führen mit Menschen, die hier geboren und aufgewachsen sind und mit dem Islam leben.
This is a hard fight, I'm not gonna lie, but my wish would be to be more understandable, more sensible. Don't see Muslims as animals or something devilish, like it's just another part of religion like everybody else.